What if I told you your body has a hidden fuel switch designed to flip, but it's been jammed in fat storing mode for years? And the culprit is insulin. Well, hi, my name is Marc Bates. I'm a metabolic health coach, and this is part of my question and answer series. Why you're always tired? The metabolic switch that's stuck in the on position. So let's get to the question that prompted this. That's a fascinating evolutionary context, the idea that we've broken the context rather than the system itself. You mentioned that chronic hyperinsulinemia is one of the key modern problems. Can you explain exactly how insulin acts as this master switch in the Randle cycle and what happens when that switch gets stuck in one position due to our modern eating patterns? Well, yeah, the answer is yes, I can answer this because insulin truly is the master switch in the Randle cycle. It's the hormone that tells your cells what fuels to prioritize, what to burn, and what to store. Under evolutionary conditions, insulin was meant to rise briefly, but not constantly. In modern context, the switch gets stuck, and that's when the entire system starts to break down. So let's look into this. Insulin's role in the Randle cycle, the master fuel switch. So insulin rises with glucose intake. So when you eat carbohydrates, your blood glucose rises, the pancreas secretes insulin, you have more insulin in your blood. Insulin is a master signal hormone. It tells the cells to prioritize glucose oxidation. So insulin flips the Randle switch. It turns glucose oxidation on and it turns off fatty acid oxidation. Okay? So why is this such a big concern? Well, elevated glucose in your blood, right? High blood sugar is actually a very toxic substance. It helps cause a lot of the problems with cardiovascular disease. So your body is responding. Oh, we got all this blood, sugar in our blood. We have to do something with it, right? We have to store it. We have to burn it. We have to do something with it. It takes priority to get rid of it, as you would with any toxin, right? You get rid of it first. And that's what your system is designed to do. Okay, so how does this do it? Well, if you look at some of the other videos on how the cell and mitochondria work, it activates the pyruvate dehydrogenase (PDH), which funnels pyruvate into the TCA cycle. It starts up the whole idea of trying to burn glucose. It inhibits hormone-sensitive lipase (HSL) in adipose tissue, which suppresses lipolysis, which is the breaking down of fat. It suppresses CPT1, carnitine palmitoyltransferase 1, which blocks fat entry into the mitochondria. So basically, it effectively shuts off the ability of fatty acids to enter the mitochondria to be burned for energy. And it stimulates lipogenesis, which converts excess carbs to fat. Right? The result is your cells shift from a flexible hybrid engine to a glucose-only mode. Okay, so what happens when the switch gets stuck, which is chronic hyperinsulinemia? In modern eating patterns, right, we eat every few hours, right? Many people are told to eat 3 meals a day, most of them all carbohydrate loaded, and people eat 2 to 3 snacks a day, which are almost always just high in carbohydrates. So we eat carbs every few hours. We add fats on top of that. Think of like toast with butter or fries cooked in oil, donuts, right? So we're getting all this carbohydrates, which elevate our insulin, and we're getting these fats which we're not allowed to burn, right? Because our body's saying, no, we got to get rid of the carbohydrates first. And so the fats get shuttled into your liver where they're stored away, right? And your carbohydrates, because there are too much of them anyways in your system, well, they keep the insulin level high and they are building more fat on your body. Okay? and your insulin levels stays elevated all day, 'cause it can take a little while, right? Especially people who are insulin intolerant, can take hours for their insulin levels to low down. If you're eating every 2-3 hours, well, you never give your body a chance to actually flush the insulin from your bloodstream. Now, remember, insulin is chronically signaling: burn glucose, store fat. Do not mobilize fat for energy. Do not oxidize fat. Basically, the switch is stuck, right, into this on position. So the consequences of this stuck switch. So the process: fat oxidation is chronically suppressed, which means that you have rising body fat, especially visceral adiposity. That's around your organs. Glucose oxidation is forced despite rising NADH acetyl-CoA, right? And that's because you've got this the insulin just forcing you to oxidize glucose. So your pyruvate dehydrogenase insulin, that's your ability to properly shuttle glucose into the mitochondria, and your mitochondrial gets backed up, right? So not only do you have a lot more carbs than you ever really need, but your system can't process it now because it's backing up. So your liver converts glucose to triglycerides, de novo lipogenesis, which causes fatty liver and hypertriglyceridemia. So you have just excess fat floating around in your bloods, right? Excess glucose plus insulin equals insulin receptor downregulation. Your body's going, why do I have all this glucose? Why do I have all this insulin? Let's just shut this down, right? So insulin resistance begins. And so now you can't even respond properly to the excess blood sugar. And mitochondrial stresses increase. And you get a lot of ROSs, reactive oxygen species, which are oxidative stress, oxidative damage, and inflammation. Okay? Basically, it's like flooring the gas pedal on one engine while leaving the backup to rust and degrade, and then wondering why performance declines if you have a vehicle that has like maybe 2 engines in it, right? Or think of like a boat where you might have 2 engines in the boat. Yeah, it really is bad to be doing it this way. Okay? So the system is designed to flip between fat burning and carb burning, right? Not stay fixed up in one condition always. In ancestral conditions, insulin rose after a meal, which helped cells burn glucose. Insulin dropped during fasting, allowing fat oxidation and ketone production. The Randle cycle flipped back and forth, which gave you metabolic flexibility. Well, in modern times, insulin barely drops because we rarely fast and we chronically overeat fats and carbs and fats. Fat oxidation remains shut down. So the fats we're eating with our carbs have nowhere to be burned off. Glucose disposal gets worse over time, right? Higher insulin is required to make it. That's insulin resistance. This turns into a vicious cycle where you keep packing on fat, right? This is how insulinemia precedes and drives insulin resistance. Not as a failure of insulin, but as a response to sustained metabolic overload. And remember, if you start, let's say you're a teenager and you're relatively healthy, metabolically fit, right? And you eat poorly, does it show up immediately as high blood sugar? Not on blood tests once a year. It won't, because your insulin is doing its job and your cells are trying as much as they can to keep up with it. But what happens is this backup and this slowdown occurs and responds over time, right? And I mean, what's the one thing that people always talk about? You have somebody who's basically maybe not necessarily a super athlete in high school, but does a little bit of athletic work. They're basically fit and thin in high school. They go to college, and they get that 20-pound dorm bulge. Right? I hear about this, right? Kids who are now sitting all day studying because they're actually having to study a lot in college, right? And they're in the dorm and they're eating dorm food, which is not the best food overall, generally, right? And it's very carb-loaded, and they've now spent their entire childhood and teenage years eating poorly, so they've been in constant metabolically turning on their glucose burning switch. Well, guess what happens? Oh, and they're drinking now. A lot of kids drink for the first time in abundance in college, right? Which is just empty carbs generally, especially drinking like beer and stuff. Well, guess what? A lot of kids get this 20-pound add-on of weight in college. Consequently, it's funny. I've done some work in the prison system working with people, right, to help them. And prisoners get the same thing. Now, it's not like the food is that great, but remember, in prison systems, they're not feeding them the highest quality food. They're feeding them food to fill their bellies, and so a lot of it is whatever is cheap, and that's going to be carbs. And prisoners don't necessarily do a whole lot. I mean, prison movies always have images of them out in the yard lifting weights and stuff, but not everyone's doing that. And there is this noticeable size that they start gaining weight. And one of the reasons why prisoners will do this is because they don't realize that their metabolism catching up with them. The other thing is that most prison clothes are not very tight fitting, and so as they're gaining weight, they're not getting the signals they would normally get if they were wearing very tight-fitting jeans and shirts and stuff, right? So there is this 20-pound bulge that is seen in the first couple of years of going to prison too. It's very similar to college in that respect. So remember, you don't want your system to be backed up in doing this. All right, sorry. So real quick, in summary, insulin is the master switch. If it's low, you burn fatty acids and ketones, and your metabolic state is flexible. It's in repair mode, and you can be fasted all the time without really feeling it, right? If your insulin level is high, but acutely, which means just once in a while, then you're burning glucose, and you're in what's called a fed state, which is a state that's burning carbohydrates. You're in an anabolic mode. You're adding fat. Right? Your body's in a fat storage mode, and you're in a growth mode. Insulin is good so if you're lifting weights, you do want insulin because insulin helps you build muscles, right? But you don't need insulin to be adding fat to your body, right? Okay, if insulin level is high chronically, right? Now your fuel that's being burned is glucose, and it's forced to do that. Your fat metabolism is blocked. Right? You have metabolic dysfunction, you have insulin resistance, and you get lots of fat gain. So insulin isn't the villain. It's a very important signaling hormone that you need. It's in a stuck signal in a world with no metabolic off switch. Well, there actually is a metabolic off switch. It's called eating a ketogenic or carnivore diet. All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you have questions, leave me a note in the comment section. Do please remember, this is a community. We're here to answer and all grow and learn together here. So if you have ideas about what you want to cover, that's where most of these videos you watch come from, are people's ideas sent to me. Let me know, and we'll work on that. Also, if you haven't done so, please like, subscribe, share this with a friend who might need it. It will do the channel a lot of good and might do that person a lot of good as well. So thank you very much.